Iraq forces begin efforts to push back the Islamic State in Anbar province. The blame game steps up between the United States, Iraq, and Iran over responsibility for the fall of Ramadi. A new reality ahead in Spain. Dramatic results in municipal elections show the ruling People's Party suffering its worst results in over 20 years, giving way to the rise in new parties and political fragmentation. And former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert sentenced to 8 months in prison for unlawfully accepting money from an American supporter. That's in addition to a 6-year prison sentence in a separate bribery conviction last year.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the news today. While on the ground in Iraq, the fight against the Islamic State is a complex interplay of Iraqi forces, Shiite militias, and American advisors. Outside, it's about a blame game. Pentagon Chief Ashton Carter slammed Iraqi forces over the weekend, saying they, quote, failed to fight in Ramadi. Iraq's prime minister expressed disbelief at his comments, while Iran charged that the United States has done nothing to aid in the fight against IS in Ramadi. Who is to blame? First, here's the latest from correspondent Shaiban Ari.
The chaotic situation in Iraq is not getting any simpler, and little is going according to plan. Fingers are being pointed across the board as the blame game gets into full swing. In an interview to CNN Sunday, U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter explained the recent loss of the city of Ramadi to Islamic State militants as a result of the Iraqi military showing, quote, no will to fight. Carter went so far as to note the Iraqi soldiers vastly outnumbered the terrorists, but chose to retreat from the city nonetheless. Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, whose conduct has been praised by American officials, responded to Carter's accusations by saying he was surprised and adding he was sure the secretary had been provided false information. Abadi also said that Ramadi will be retaken by Iraqi forces within days. In a possible sign he may not be wrong, local Sunni tribal fighters managed to retake the town of Khushaiba al-Sharqiyya, about 10 kilometers east of Ramadi, with the help of Shiite militias and government forces. Territory was also retaken to the south of the city. This achievement is not to be taken for granted, considering the fears of sectarian clashes between Shiites and local Sunnis.
Thanks to God Almighty, we will never leave this district. Although we have been subjected to pressure and attacks from IS criminals, and after the collapse of the military forces, we have remained steadfast in the district, and we will never allow IS to enter this district.
The Shiites will play a major role in any successful effort to liberate Ramadi, but even the Iraqi government itself is wary of the potential consequences.
I hope the Shiite militia will work in a way which leads to Iraqi unity, and not to the experiences of Salah ad-Din, Diyala and Baghdad, which gave the impression that the Shiites came to these areas to change the demographics.
Iran has not been timid about the key role it has been playing in the battle against IS. General Qasem Soleimani, the commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's elite Quds force, responsible for the Islamic Republic's military activities abroad, was quoted saying nobody except Iran is present in the fight against IS. In a twist on Secretary Carter's accusations leveled against the Iraqi military, Soleimani added, Obama has not done a damn thing so far to confront IS. Doesn't that show there is no will in America to confront it? When it comes to this battle, which has engaged more than 60 countries, it seems there are at least as many points of view.
Yes, and with me right now here in the studio is Dani Ayalon, former Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister and former Ambassador to the United States. Ambassador Ayalon, thank you very much for coming.
Good to be with you, Lucy.
You know, I believe that some people in Iraq are saying, how dare they? How dare the United States blame us with not actually being able to fight the IS after the big mess that they left here in the region?
Well, Lucy, we have here a perfect storm, a situation where I would say everybody is right. The Americans are right because it's true, they left with a mess, but they invested so much billions of dollars in training the Iraqi army, hoping that they would hold the fort. At the same time, the Iraqis are also right in the sense that the Americans, and we talked about it many times here, without real boots on the ground, it will not be able to really counter ISIS. Not only that, most of the air operations are ineffective. And we've heard that 75% of all American planes come back with the bombs. They are not even using it because they don't have the targets.
But what if the United States is leaving with actually no understanding even about the tribal let's say, situation in Iraq between the Sunni, the Shiite, the Kurds, all this mess. They don't understand the culture that they left. They expected that they will leave, that they will build some kind of a democracy in Iraq after years of chaos, years of dictatorship. Really, what are they expecting that will happen? They are really expecting that people who were in fight among themselves will start fighting themselves in another front? It's a little bit like unrealistic.
I would say the biggest mistakes the Americans made, and it's not under Obama, it's under Bush, was the dismantling of the Iraqi army. After they pushed out Saddam Hussein out of government, they could have had the Iraqi army just on a silver platter for them to retrain, to rearm. They were very loyal to the Americans, and they could have kept the country together. With dismantling the army, there was nobody to fight the tribal wars and, of course, the sectarian wars, the Kurds, the Shia, and of course, and the Sunnis. And Iraq, in effect, now is not a country. It's completely disintegrated. You have 3 different regions there.
Did they expect, it seems for me that when they left Iraq, they didn't even expect this phenomena IS, that is called IS. They didn't think that this is how it seems for me, that IS will get in and will, let's say, start conquering big chunks of Iraq, big chunks of Syria, will start doing this mess in the Middle East. And this came as an element of surprise to the United States.
Absolutely. I think to everybody, including the Iranians, I think what happened after the Americans left Iraq, the Iranians overplayed their card, actually pushing for a pro-Iranian government in Iraq, Shia government, with the Shia militias, and they were actually harassing, and going into the Sunni areas, so this was a reaction. So this is why the Iranians are also to be blamed. So this is what I'm saying. It's a perfect storm. It's the Iraqis to blame, it's the Americans to blame, it's the Iranians to blame, and the ISIS is the only one benefiting, and it gets energy by it's working like a cancer, where they conquer an area, they confiscate the and they get all the resources so they can conquer more areas. And right now, without real massive boots on the ground, whether the Arab League armies, Saudis, Egyptians, Jordanians, you name it, or Americans or NATO, I think we're going to see this mess for a long time.
Yeah, it's amazing. They're taking control of all the, let's say, the efforts and the weapons that the Americans put there in Iraq, which is, what comes around goes around in one way or another. But let's join to this conversation with us from Erbil, Iraq, is journalist Sofia Barbarani. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening.
Sofia, in one way or another, I believe that the people in Iraq were expecting this. The people in Iraq are actually right now maybe surprised that the United States is blaming them or saying, what did you expect when you left the Iraq? What did you expect, that it will be all peace and love?
Yes, well, I think we're seeing a blame game certainly being played, a very predictable one. We are also seeing a lot of the officials that have come forward to blame America are Iranian affiliated. So we are basically seeing an American-Iranian dispute playing off against the backdrop of the conflict that is happening in Iraq. It's not surprising. Having said that, the Americans were clear from the start that there were not going to be boots on the ground. They were clear from the start that what they were going to give to the Iraqis was military support in terms of the coalition airstrikes and advisors on the ground, and that is what they have been doing.
Sofia, you are there, you're seeing the situation. What are the chances that the Iraqi army can actually fight this fight against IS?
Well, according to Prime Minister Abadi, Ramadi will be retaken, he said, within days. On the ground, the spokesperson for the Badr Brigade, which is part of the Shia, the greater umbrella of the Shia militia, said that actually there is no specific schedule to what will happen. They don't really know what the following days have in store for them. However, the terrain in Anbar may make this military operation easier. The Iraqi military will not be able to take back Ramadi without help from the Shia militias and from the U.S. and coalition airstrikes.
And where does it put Iran?
Iran will obviously have a huge involvement in this, as it did in Tikrit, as it has done since June in all of this conflict, expanding their influence on the country.
Yes, Sofia Barbarani, thank you very, very much for this. So one side is saying, yes, yes, we can do it. The other side is saying, yes, you're saying that you can do it, but you're not doing it. And on the ground, it doesn't seem that they can actually do it. And the Arab countries are just watching aside and wonder. They are laughing a big laugh.
Yes, and you see when there are such, resonating failures, everybody's frustrated, and then they start the blame game. And the blame game, of course, is not a substitute to a policy, is not a substitute to an action. And right now, there is not policy, there is not coherent direction whatsoever. The only ones who have real, very, very dedicated direction are the IS, and I would also say the Iranians. So at the end of the day, I'm afraid we're going to see Iraq actually gobbled up by those forces, the Shia from Iran and the very extreme Sunnis of IS.
Yeah, and on the other side, they're just in a few days, in the end of June, they will have to sit with the Iranians and agree with them on something, which is something else completely. Danny Ayalon, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
And to the west, in Syria, intense fighting continues over 4 years into the war, and overnight, regime aircraft launched a series of airstrikes in and around Palmyra. Archaeological history now in the hands of the Islamic State. More from Shaiban Ari.
Following the Islamic State's conquest of the ancient Syrian city of Palmyra last week, the anti-IS coalition, as well as the Syrian regime itself, are now engaged in an intensive aerial bombardment campaign against IS targets throughout the region in an attempt to blunt the jihadist momentum. The Pentagon said 10 targets had been hit in Syria since Sunday. Most of the coalition airstrikes were concentrated in the area of Al-Hasaka, in northeastern Syria, hitting 4 Islamic State positions. These strikes were conducted in support of ground operations by Kurdish forces, which are continuing to make progress in their efforts to push back IS in this area. To the south, the Islamic State's new prize, Palmyra, also finds itself under heavy bombardment by the Assad regime's air force. But here it seems there is no fighting force on the ground that currently has the will and capacity to stand in the way of IS. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights states that since IS established its presence in the Palmyra area 10 days ago, at least 217 people have been killed, including children, with another 300 soldiers killed in the course of the fighting. Not for the first time, the strategy of relying predominantly on aerial force is being criticized.
We've always been saying that the air campaign is not enough. There is so many steps which we have to cooperate and coordinate together to make the campaign against terrorists effective. We did not fail, but it is not enough.
One force that has engaged IS on a number of fronts is Hezbollah, the Lebanese Shiite militia. Like his masters in Iran, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah has been vocal about its group's role in combating Sunni jihadism.
All those who kept silent when IS took areas in Syria are responsible today for what is happening in Iraq and are responsible for the slaughter today in Palmyra.
Hezbollah said on Monday it had captured 2 hilltops from the al-Qaeda-linked Nusra front near the Syrian border, killing dozens of Sunni militants. Undeniably, the fighting on the ground in both Syria and Iraq is becoming an increasingly sectarian affair.
Yes, we just spoke about Iran and its connection, and right now, coming after a long, long time, I missed him so much. Iranian politics analyst Meir Javid Anfar. Good evening.
Thank you, Lucy.
Really good to have you back
Thank you
here
very
again.
much. Thank you.
So explain to us, please, the situation right now that Iran is in, because not only that it's affecting Iraq, it's also affecting Syria and affecting Yemen. Of course, it's affecting all the region.
Regarding Iran's Syria strategy, it seems that Iran's adopted a new strategy whereby it's getting the Syrian government to protect the population centers. They're basically telling the Syrians apparently to cut their losses. You can't control all of Syria. Leave the unpopulated areas. Protect the important areas, which are the major cities, the Damascus-Beirut highway, and all the coastal areas, and of course the areas where the Alawites are situated. So Iran's basically protecting its interests there. In Iraq, it's not going well. I think the Ramadi takeover was a surprise to the Iranians as well. And in Yemen, I think they're actually a little bit surprised by the tough line that the Saudis have taken. I think the image in Iran was that the Saudis like to stay in their Cadillacs and they don't like to fight, and this is being challenged now.
Meir, explain to me, until when or until where can Syria take this help from Iran, because it seems that Iran has other interests, and of course the Syrian regime has other interests. And if they will go too far with it, the Syrian regime may lose at the end of the day its power.
Well, the Iranians, according to a consulting group in Washington, the Orient Group, they published a report recently. They basically said that one of the conditions for Iran reaching a deal with the West would be that if Assad ever goes, Iran's interests in Syria have to be protected. Its financial interests have to be protected. Iran's strategic interests have to be protected. No Iranian politician would be brought before any court, international court. But that doesn't mean they've given up on Assad. They haven't. They are basically, there's common interest. I've heard different interpretations. I don't think Assad takes all of his orders from Tehran, no, but the opinion of Tehran is very important to them. And they will protect Bashar al-Assad until the very last moment. But if it's beyond help, then of course they'll let him go. But Iran is not in any mood right now to give up on Syria, and that's logical because they don't want to lose Hezbollah's access.
Now, explain to me how much they would like to continue this, let's say, strategic situation that they have in the Middle East until the date, the 30th of June. How much it's connected to each other?
I think it's connected more also it's connected to that, but because Iran doesn't want to show flexibility, because they're worried that if they show flexibility in Iraq and Syria, they'll be expected to show flexibility at the nuclear talks, and this is something they don't want to give leverage. This is why it's important for them that they make, that they show their strength in these areas, because otherwise the West may, if they show their weakness, then the West may exploit it.
But if they will show some victories against IS, that means that what, they will be able to ask more in Lausanne?
That really depends on the American domestic political scene. If the Republicans are going to be against any concessions made to Iran, then that's not going to happen. I think the Iranians would like that to happen, but I don't think they're going to get more concessions. I think what we have to look at, Lucy, at this point is life beyond the deal. I think it looks inevitable that there's going to be a deal. We have to look beyond it, because America and Iran have common interest in terms of fighting ISIS. The only thing that could stop it is the domestic politics in both countries. Zarif you should have seen the report yesterday. The verbal attack he was subjected to on the floor of the Iranian Majlis for making any concessions to the United States. And of course, the Americans, Obama would have to be very careful about working with Iran over with regards to ISIS, because we know what awaits him with the Tea Party and the Republican Party. The two sides do have shared interests, but I think, especially in Iran, the conservatives, after such a deal, they'll make sure that an agreement is only about a deal, and if there is any cooperation with America, it will be tactical and nothing else.
Yes, Mayor Javed Anfar, it's so great to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy.
And a mention, like we talked just a little while ago about Yemen, and a mention of another fight in which Iran is deeply involved is Yemen. The battle between Iran-backed Houthi rebels and Saudi-supported fighters is in full swing today. That meant the southern cities of Taiz and Dalia. In Taiz, the city that spearheaded the revolt, Houthi rebels bombarded several districts with rockets and tank fire. Meanwhile, UN peace talks set for Geneva later this week have been delayed, likely indefinitely. And in the Tunisian capital this morning, a soldier opened fire on comrades at a barracks near Parliament, killing 7 and wounding several others. The background is still unknown, but authorities say that the shooter, who was shot dead, had psychological problems. More from Eli Ochenberg.
7 troops were killed and at least 10 others were wounded Monday as a Tunisian soldier opened fire on his colleagues at a military base in Tunis before being shot dead himself. The Defense Ministry said that he had family and psychological problems. The incident alarmed the capital city, which is still on edge after the attack in March by Islamist gunmen on the Bardo National Museum, not far from the military base where the shooting took place. At the museum, 2 gunmen opened fire on tourists, killing 22, mostly foreigners. Jihadists affiliated with IS claimed responsibility for the deadly attack, the worst in Tunisia in a decade. Since the Bordeaux attack, Tunisian forces have been carrying out operations against Islamist fighters. Tunisia has been battling militant groups with links to IS and Al-Qaeda, which have carried out attacks on security forces since overthrowing its secular dictator, Zainuddin El Abidine bin Ali, in 2011.
Yes, it's a new political landscape in Spain, and what can be seen as punishment for Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy. Over 4 years of severe spending cuts and corruption scandals, now a new anti-austerity protest party, Podemos, could govern in the conservative capital. Mirav Seville explains.
Thousands of supporters of anti-austerity parties in Spain took to the streets to celebrate well into the night Sunday as new parties, Ciudadanos and Podemos, garnered additional support in local and regional elections. And the ruling People's Party suffered its worst results in 20 years.
This is the possibility to finally be able to finish 24 years of repressive and dictatorial People's Party government.
With the vote count nearly complete, it seems the People's Party won the most votes, with 27%. But the PP and the country's second traditional party, the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party, failed to win majorities in most areas and lost significant support to the left-wing newcomers. And change seems to be on the horizon.
This is a magical night. It is a historic night in Spain which points directly to change. It is a matter of pride for us to be the engine for that change.
In the capital, Madrid, Podemos-backed coalition Ahora Madrid came in a close second to the PP's candidate. And 71-year-old Manuela Carmena and her party could wrestle power from the ruling party if they form a coalition with the socialists. While in Barcelona, 41-year-old Ada Colau, an anti-eviction activist, was elected mayor, a win she called a victory for David over Goliath.
We are proud. This is not happening in Barcelona alone. This is a democratic revolution. It's unstoppable, and it's happening in Catalonia, Spain, and we hope to see it happen all over the south of Europe.
But this is just the beginning for these emerging parties, and the real test will be November's general elections.
We are making history, and we are demonstrating that in Spain there's room for a third way, and that this third way is without any doubt Ciudadanos. We've put the municipal and regional foundations in place to reach our main aim, to win the Spanish general elections.
Sunday's elections are widely seen as an opportunity to test the voters' mood before November, and if these results foreshadow the general elections, Spain may follow in Greece's footsteps, choosing anti-austerity over traditional politics.
Yes, and with me right now is Martin Roberts, a journalist based in Madrid. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us, Martin.
Good evening.
So, Martin, 52% of the votes. This is a big drop from 4 years ago, which when they gained 65%. And we're talking about corruption and problems with the economy. This is something that Spain was not ready for.
Well, it's been on the cards for a while because the two parties basically emerged from a series of protests which began exactly 4 years ago when people started camping out in main squares across Spain. And since then, the economy basically has just got worse. There have been far more corruption scandals. So, I mean, this has been on the cards for a long time.
So what is it? It's the governing parties that didn't pay any attention to the people's will, or did they just do whatever they want and just didn't think about these results?
Well, I think the most overwhelming figure that you need to bear in mind is that of unemployment. Overall, it's 24%, and amongst young people, it's almost 50%. I mean, when you have that situation coupled with the fact that for 2 or 3 years now, you haven't been able to open a newspaper in Spain without reading about corruption. People think that the two main parties are not governing for anybody except for themselves. So that explains why a lot of people are basically very fed up with business as usual, and that was very clear in yesterday's election results.
Yeah, but Martin, let's say there were some warning signs in Greece and Italy. The governing parties didn't see it coming?
I think they did, but until, I mean, yesterday was the first main test of it. I mean, the mood of the people, has been very clear for a long time, but this is the first main electoral test. And I think it did come as a big shock, particularly to the People's Party, because from 4 years ago has gone down by 11. So they were still the most voted
Yeah, Martin, unfortunately we have some problems with the line, but thank you very, very much for this for now. Over the past year, the Australian government has moved forward with a series of changes to its national security policy, including toughening security laws, putting more funding into police and intelligence. The next step looks to be focused on changes to citizenship laws. Matthias Imbar and Shahal Peled have more.
He announced it in February, 2 months after the Sydney attack committed by an Australian in the name of the Islamic State. Now, Australia's Prime Minister Tony Abbott is determined to pass a bill which would strip terrorists of their citizenship.
The government will develop amendments to the Australian Citizenship Act so that we can revoke or suspend Australian citizenship in the case of dual nationals. It has long been the case that people who fight against Australia forfeit their citizenship.
Abbott has no intention of stopping here. Australians who are accused of supporting or being involved in terrorist activities are likely to be affected by this bill, which will be debated this week in the Parliament in Canberra.
For Australian nationals, we are examining suspending some of the privileges of citizenship for individuals involved in terrorism. These could include restricting the ability to leave or return to Australia and access to consular services overseas, as well as access to welfare.
According to the newspaper The Australian, second-generation Australians who were involved in terrorist activities might lose their citizenship and could be forced to adopt their parents' original citizenship. The government is also considering launching a surveillance program in schools named Jihadi Watch to identify students who show signs of radicalization. 110 Australians have reportedly joined the Islamic State jihadists in Iraq and Syria. 3 of them are negotiating the terms of their repatriation.
Yes, and before we're going out for a small break, this afternoon an Air France jetliner heading from Paris to New York was escorted by U.S. fighter planes after a threat was made against the flight. The plane landed at JFK without incident and was taken into a security search. Air France said the threat was phoned in from the United States. Yes, and right now we're going out for a small break, 2-minute break, and I'll be back for the rest of the news today. Don't go anywhere, 2 minutes, and I'll be back. As Iraq forces begin efforts to push back the Islamic State in Anbar province, the blame game steps up between the United States, Iraq, and Iran over responsibility for the fall of Ramadi. A new reality ahead in Spain. Dramatic results in municipal elections show the ruling People's Party suffering its worst results in over 20 years, giving way to a rise in new parties and political fragmentation. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert sentenced to 8 months in prison for unlawfully accepting money from an American supporter. That's in addition to a 6-year prison sentence in a separate bribery conviction last year. Welcome back. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert was sentenced today to 8 months in jail following his conviction for fraud and breach of trust last March. These 8 months add to another 6-year prison term Olmert was sentenced to in a different trial. Eli Ochenberg has more on the man who once was Israel's greatest hope for peace and now is set to sit behind bars.
A year ago, pundits were still debating a possible political comeback, but Monday it was crystal clear. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert's political career is finished. Already facing a 6-year prison term on a different charge, he was sentenced Monday morning to an additional 8 months in jail.
Today the court delivered a clear and indisputable message that a black flag of immorality and corruption waves above the defendant's actions.
Olmert was found guilty of fraud and breach of trust over money he received from an American businessman, Morris Talansky, when he was the mayor of Jerusalem and the Minister of Industry and Trade. He was originally acquitted of the charges in 2012, but was found guilty on an appeal by the state attorney after his former aide Shula Zakian, who had previously stood by him, decided to reveal new evidence, recorded phone conversations, as part of a plea bargain.
The court says the defendant, in the time he was a civil servant, received envelopes with cash time after time when no one knew, and he lied to the state comptroller. The court defined those actions as a continuing assault on ethics, the public's trust, and common values of honesty and decency.
But this is far from Olmert's sole problem. The former prime minister is involved in 4 different corruption cases, each more tangled than the other. Olmert continues to deny any of the wrongdoings which forced him to quit the premiership 6 years ago and thrust him into a notorious eternal limelight as the first former Israeli premier to be convicted of corruption and, possibly, end up behind bars.
And the news today, diplomatic correspondent Eli Ochenberg is here with me.
What a day.
What a day.
Yes.
What a day for him. What a year. What 2 years, 3 years? A lot up and down, ups and down, ups and downs.
Absolutely. And if I may, Lucy, the story of Olmert is somewhat can also be seen the story of the state of Israel. He started as a driven young politician, forcefully want to fight corruption. Then he grew up to be the great hope of Israel to reach a peace agreement with the Palestinians. He was accused of corruption, acquitted, got backstabbed by his closest person, and until the very, very end, despite all the hot mess, many people still hoped it will manage to clear out his name and have a glorious political comeback. And if it wasn't reality, again,
it could have been a great Hollywood movie.
Perfect novel, really. But before we move on to talk about what is expected from now on, 2 pivotal points from today's sentence. The court mentioned that it took into consideration the great contribution Olmert had to the state of Israel and his many positive doings, but despite that, it wasn't enough to completely avoid jail time, which has great significance.
This is not only great significance. Sending a prime minister to jail in Israel is maybe democracy at its best in one way or another.
Absolutely, and it's in order to show all the rest of the politicians, which unfortunately we see keeps on getting involved in such troubles, that there will be punishment. And another important thing is that until this very day, Olmert still does not acknowledge the severity of his actions. And it's not only symbolic, it's also practical.
I think that he couldn't acknowledge the fact that he can be a prime minister. He couldn't digest the fact that he will be a prime minister. He was a prime minister. He didn't digest it. And then
in the same manner, he cannot digest what's going on now.
Yeah. So what is expected of him? With all, appealing and everything,
he's not going into jail tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
That's for sure.
Okay.
His legal team already announced it is going to appeal to the High Court, and that means at least 45 days of delay until the execution of the sentence. But it is due to request yet another extension until the Supreme Court will give its verdict. So we have plenty more time. And if the High Court will decide not to change the decision that was already given both in this case and in the major Holy Land case, Olmert's team still have a few opportunities. He can either ask for a retrial, another session, or in the worst case, ask for pardon, which means that Olmert will have to acknowledge and take responsibility for his action, not something he will be, willing to do unless it's the really last resort. Yes, absolutely. Let's hope Israel will finish at a better state.
Yeah, exactly. We will finish at the same point that you started. Yeah, I really hope that Israel will finish at a better place. Eli Ochenberg, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. Nepalis continue to live in fear 1 month after the devastating earthquake struck the country, claiming thousands of lives and injuring tens of thousands. And concerns still grow as possible spread of disease and difficult weather threaten to relief work. Shachar Peled has more.
Dolma Chering and her young classmates haven't attended school for over a month.
Just recently we were complaining about how packed our class was. Now I really miss that class. I would do anything to get that class back. I miss my homework, I miss our teachers, and I miss what we used to learn.
As Nepal marks 1 month since the 7.8 magnitude earthquake that killed over 8,500 people, relief workers are racing against time.
It's a really big disaster for the country. So I don't even want to guess, because and the monsoon season is coming and winter is coming over the mountains. It could take a very long time.
About 500,000 homes were destroyed in Nepal by the April 25th quake and a series of aftershocks. Hundreds of tents occupied by survivors remain pitched in open fields, and the government estimates reconstruction will cost $7 billion, a third of the country's GDP. Meanwhile, Nepali residents still live in fear of a recurrence.
The situation has not returned to normal. This morning I felt an aftershock, and our family is still very worried and scared, especially our kids. They are afraid about what is going on.
Despite international attention, including visits by Hollywood stars such as Susan Sarandon, in a bid to get response to the disaster, thousands of Nepali citizens still struggle to rebuild their lives.
Yes, and with me right now on the line from Kathmandu is Bishnu P. Champagain, country director of aid group Tevel Tzedek in Kathmandu. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Can you explain to us, we just finished the report saying that a lot of Nepalese will find it very hard to reconstruct their lives. How hard is it on the ground?
Okay. Actually, today and tomorrow is going to be 1 month of the first earthquake. There was a big earthquake in Nepal in the history of more than 80 years. So since then, there was the first earthquake, and then the one day after, there was a second, and then so continuously a lot of reports checked. So that makes the life is a very vulnerable situation here, and as you know, from the over 8,000 people have been killed, and many of them got injured, and the schools, all the schools and colleges is closed, and the market and business is still not opening properly, because the main reason is the aftershock is coming every day. Every day, a few shocks day and night, and also because it's getting monsoon. And even today, now, just outside there's raining and there's lightning, and the people, most of the people, their house is destroyed or their house is collapsed. They are outside in the tent. So because of this rain and a lot of this situation weather, and it's getting very, very abnormal life, and people are still fighting and not coming back to the work.
Bishnu, in this earthquake, some people were hurt, a big amount of people were hurt, and some didn't, and some are still living in houses and still have their, let's say, homes, and some are living in the streets. Is this creating some kind of a, let's say, stress or maybe criminal cases that the country was not expecting that will happen?
Actually, in terms of literature, there was something mentioned that, okay, the Nepal is in the earthquake in the situation, but some people know this, but ordinary people, they were not realizing that this kind of disaster will be soon. So even the government and the civil society and no one was prepared. So it was kind of shocked. Even engineers and builders and ordinary people in schools, nobody was thinking. We used to have an earthquake in a very small shock, and sometimes we have some quake, but we never feel such kind of disaster will be. And suddenly, when in the second, people got house lost, and thousands of people died, and then people had to move from their house and to end and center. So that's really not expected.
Yes, Mr. Bishnu P. Champagain, thank you very, very much for this. And in India, an extreme heat wave has killed at least 539 people, and it looks like no relief is on the way. Areas in southern and northern India have seen soaring temperatures. In Allahabad, in the state of Uttar Pradesh, reaching 47.7 degrees Celsius. Many of those who died in the heat wave have been construction workers and elderly or homeless, and the country's meteorological agency has issued warnings saying it will continue over the coming days. And right now, with me here in the studio is Economy Magazine reporter Daniel Roth. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Good evening.
So today we'll talk about China and its will to go with big projects, but it doesn't have the money, so it's going to the private sector.
Yes. Well, so this is a huge, huge project, or many 1,000 projects. China's announced $318 billion worth of projects that they're going to start implementing. As you mentioned, the interesting, special thing about this is that they're trying out public-private partnerships. This is interesting for China. It's happened in Europe, in North America, in much of the Western capitalist world. In China's capitalist system, which is ironically hyper-capitalist in many ways, this is a semi-new project. It's also a dangerous project. One of the things that's been learned from these public-private partnerships is that prices tends to go up.
Yes, and creates monopoles and creates a lot of problems in the economy. But explain to me how it's going to work exactly with China being a country, communist country, that it doesn't work exactly good with private sectors or individuals.
Well, it's China is still a very, very regulated top-down economy, but it's no longer really can be considered communist. It quietly changed over to capitalism and has been quite successful at that. Its growth, right now people are talking about the slowdown in China. Its slowdown is about 7% growth that's expected this year, which is huge. It's still among the leading economies in the world.
In one way or another, trying to copy what is happening in the United States? Because of the, let's say, economic struggle between the United States and China?
It's one of the things that, you know, we have a lot of reports of people saying, well, China resembles America in the 19th century, China resembles America in the 20th century. One of the key things is people are talking about this as maybe a Marshall Plan, the rebuilding of Europe after World War II, that this kind of huge investment really indicates that China is following in those footsteps.
That's Daniel Roth. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
In the jungles of Malaysia, authorities have found some 139 graves and signs of torture in more than 24 human trafficking camps suspected of being used by gang smuggling migrants. A similar find was found just a month ago on the Thai side of the border. Mirav Savir reports.
Malaysian police confirmed on Monday that they found nearly 140 apparent graves believed to contain the bodies of migrants.
We have discovered 139, which we believe to be graves. We don't know what are underneath.
Some of the graves contain more than one body, and one corpse is highly decomposed.
We will conduct post-mortem on those remains which we found to get to the cause of death of all the victims. We will investigate, and we will not condone anybody, including Malaysian officials.
Police also found more than 24 suspected trafficking camps. The sites are near the northwestern border with Thailand, where earlier in the month, Thai police found trafficking camps and shallow graves. On Monday, Thai police said there were no more human trafficking camps left in southern Thailand after their month-long crackdown. The discovery of these sites comes as the region struggles to deal with migrants at sea. They are mainly Rohingya Muslims from Myanmar fleeing persecution, but are also Bangladeshi migrants trying to escape poverty. And Thailand's recent crackdown seems to have caused traffickers to abandon them at sea. On Friday, the UNHCR said an estimated 3,500 migrants are still stranded on boats, their supplies dwindling.
So we're still staying with the migrant phenomena or migrant problems. For months, we've seen the grim images of desperate shipwrecked migrants in the Mediterranean Sea. In 2014, Italy alone rescued nearly 170,000 migrants, and most of them are still on Italian soil. Tonight on Insight Magazine, a closer look at how they are surviving. Here's an excerpt from Jeremy Salk.
This support helps migrants stand up. It also gives wings to some of them.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I am sending this message to all Europeans. We are begging you and begging you and begging you again and again to stand up and help the immigrants. We do have problems in our countries. For some of them, their life is in danger. That's why they cannot live there any longer. They need to flee and seek a place where they can find peace and build a future.
Just like the other Africans who are here with him, Lamine is young, very young. He just turned 18. Watching their juvenile faces, one can hardly imagine what they've been through. Today, their struggle for life goes on.
No border, no nation, stop deportation!
Egalitarian speech, internationalist doctrine, and disregard of frontiers. Although the slogans represent a certain type of leftist ideology, the Catania residents who came as sheer spectators are not very far from thinking along the same lines.
And with me right now is the host of the I-24 News Sports Magazine, Jonathan Reagan.
Hello.
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 All good?
All good, yourself?
Yeah? You enjoyed the small vacation that we had?
Yes, I did.
Mini?
Mini, good enough.
Yet you are tired.
Yes, I am.
Yes. What did you do?
My boy took me to the beach, and he's not afraid. I am, he's not. Therefore, I'm tired.
And, of course, he has a lot of energy, and you don't.
Yes, I'm old. What can I do?
Because you were occupied with the elections of FIFA, right?
Yes.
Of course.
Yes. I was worried about that. You know, Sepp Blatter was here in Israel last week, but the Israeli-Palestinian issue is not his main concern. It is being re-elected again to being the FIFA president for the.
It was obvious, right?
The elections are this coming Friday. There were many candidates against him. They all now withdrew except for one, Prince Ali bin Hussein from Jordan. All the opposition is backing him. Do they stand a chance? Not really. Doesn't look this way. This is a story about that Liz Barenbaum and Michael Friedman did, summarizing all this campaign for the FIFA elections.
Let's see.
Sepp Blatter, the current president of FIFA, is seeking a fifth term in office, and with the withdrawal of nominees including the president of the Dutch Federation, Michael van Praag, and former Portuguese footballer, Luis Figo, we are now left with just Prince Ali of Jordan as his challenger.
Prince Ali Al Hussein convincingly demonstrated that at this moment in time, he is the candidate who has the biggest chance to challenge Sepp Blatter.
A week before the FIFA presidential election, these withdrawals were expected due to the fact that all the candidates are seeking the same voter support. And if they run separately, there's no chance for one candidate to beat Blatter. Van Praag, former president of Ajax, announced he was pulling out of the race in a statement, as did Figo, the former Portuguese star, who realized he couldn't win and therefore decided to withdraw from the race. Ali has traveled around the world to convince the presidents of the football federations to vote for him. He has sat on the FIFA Executive Committee since 2011, and with almost an unlimited campaign budget, he is campaigning for change.
Wonderful as football is, and as popular as it is around the world, unfortunately the reputation of FIFA is not there at all. So therefore a change needs to happen.
But the prince has his disadvantages. He is not the president of the Asian Confederation, which his own country Jordan is part of. In addition, at 39 years of age, he appears to be too young for some voters and has only been sitting on the executive committee of FIFA for just 4 years. Blatter, for his part, has been part of FIFA for 40 years, 17 of them as the president, something which exerts great influence in the football community. Despite Figo stepping out of the race, he is upset over the voting process and took to Facebook to express his discontent.
This electoral process is anything but an election. It is a referendum which aims to give absolute power to a man that I refuse to support. Is it normal that an election for one of the largest organizations in the world takes place without public debate?
Blatter has indeed refused any public debate, repeating that his record speaks for itself. Despite all the criticism, he is the clear favorite to win the race and head football's governing body for at least 4 more years.
You said something.
Go ahead.
Can I
Quote me, please.
Sepp Blatter is like Benjamin Netanyahu
yes.
of FIFA.
Meaning he can do whatever he wants and the people will still vote for him.
Yeah.
Take it to whatever direction he wants.
Didn't say if it's good or bad.
No, I'm just... he does whatever he wants and then the people vote for him. Good or bad, anyone's choice.
people's choice.
Yes.
It's always the people's choice. This is democracy. Let's talk about the NBA.
We love democracy. Yeah, the NBA, I love the NBA, but the conference finals, for the moment, they're very one-sided, as opposed to what we've seen in the conference semifinals. So we head to the NHL, the National Hockey League. There, the conference finals are just crazy. We begin with Tampa Bay against the New York Rangers. The Tampa Bay, they won Game 5 2-0. Thing is, both series after 4 games were tied at 2-2, meaning they will go to at least 6 games. Whereas in the NBA, we're looking at a situation where possibly both series will end in sweeps. Here, both series will go at least to Game 6. This is Tampa Bay beating the New York Rangers 2-0 last night. So Tampa Bay is now up 3-2 in this series. The other one, Chicago Blackhawks against the Anaheim Ducks. Game 5 is tonight. Series is tied at 2-2. So things are boiling hot in the NHL, boiling hot on the ice. I don't know if that's funny or not, but not funny. My democracy stuff was more funny.
Yeah, it was.
So,
but it's boiling hot also on basketball, right?
Yeah. So that's for this. On to tennis.
Yes.
French Open is on right now. Most of the big seeds are still one either not played yet or won the first game. But this is what happened before the tournament. Look at who they have to face. This guy's name is Stefan Bojic. He does tricks with a ball. Now, this is Novak Djokovic, world number 1, watching him and saying, what is this guy doing? How can he do all this? I am the best tennis player in the world. I cannot compete with that. So you know what happens at the end of the video? Djokovic says, no, I'm out. You win. I'm out.
Good one.
This is what happened.
I can do this with a bat.
Yeah, yes, you can, Lucy. Of course you can.
Why? Are you saying that I can't?
No, I just said you can.
Of course I can.
Of course you can.
Try me outside.
Do I sound sarcastic?
Yes. Of course.
Am.
Of course you sound sarcastic. You're okay, I'm
yes, you can do it. You can do it. Here, I'm being very serious. On to our last item, 605 kilometers per hour. That's fastish. A bit fast. That's the record. This man, whose name is Richard Brown, is trying to break. His training. This is a bicycle with an engine of a helicopter, and he's trying to set a world record, the fastest pace ever, the fastest speed ever on 2 wheels. He has to break the current record, which
is he flying?
It's on land, but it looks like this. It looks almost like flying, and his aim is to break the world record, which currently stands at 605 kilometers per hour. He will do it in September. Now he's training. He's in training, so it's just, the 500 Ks.
605 kilometers
per hour. That's the record he has to break.
And if you drive from the south of Israel to the north of Israel, how long it will take you 605?
Like this.
Oh.
and you're there. That's fast.
Jaffa Port.
Thank you. Very insightful.
Very exciting. Yes, and now to science of shopping. New research finds what many people could have told you already, that we get a powerful high from shopping. At least me. ABC's report explains.
Finding a good deal makes me really happy.
What woman doesn't love to shop? But what if we told you shopping can give you the same pleasure as sex?
I love this.
To find out how that's possible, we mounted a GoPro on 30-year-old Alex Roberts.
I'm excited to shop, to be honest.
To see what's going on inside her brain as she hits the stores.
I love this. This is amazing.
According to analysis provided by the facial tracking company Inviso, she is on a shopping high. Her eyes are wide and alert, mouth slightly open. These are all signs that the pleasure center in her brain is lighting up, which experts at the University of Michigan say is comparable to the joy felt after having sex. They were also surprised to learn something else.
There's this pain that's associated with spending. And to the best that we could tell, there seems to be this trade-off. It's a weighing of pleasure versus pain.
Was that the case for Alex?
I need a denim shirt.
Alex's quick tightening of the lips and scanning items indicates she's disappointed and feeling stress, according to facial tracking experts.
All right, your receipt for the bag. Dress today.
The facial tracking results show a higher stress level, indicating she may have felt compelled to buy the clothes because they were cheap. Retailers use dozens of tricks that lure customers to buy more.
These stores are set up to set off your brain in the pleasure center. They're hitting something in our human behavior that gets you to want to buy. We call it here buying yourself happy.
Okay, I'm in love with this, but it's an extra small, so we're gonna see if this fits.
There's the lights, there's the music, so it's really immersing yourself in the feel-good experience.
But Alex says learning the science behind her shopping habits won't deter her from getting that fashion fix. Mara Schiavocampo, ABC News, New York.
I don't get misty eyes when I'm shopping. No. 10 minutes break. We're going out for a flash, an update from our news desk, and then we will be back for the rest of the news today. 2 minutes after the flash. Don't go anywhere. 12 minutes and I'll be back. Welcome back to the news today. Our next story begins with a question. What killed Ariel Ronis, the Israeli civil servant who committed suicide this weekend, was publicly accused of racism? What followed was a case of online shaming by the Israeli public, which many people now say pushed him to take his own life. Ayman Siksik has more on the case in which no one and everyone are guilty at the same time.
Two versions of a story about racism. One Facebook post, and then one fatal gunshot to the head. Ariel Ronis, an official at Israel Population, Immigration and Border Authority, took his own life as a result of what some are calling online bullying. So where did it all begin? On Wednesday, May 20th, an Israeli citizen of African-American origin complained online that she had been mistreated while at the Interior Ministry. She had come in to apply for a passport for one of her children, but said she was discriminated against because of the color of her skin. Her public complaint went viral within hours, but it was Ariel Ronis, the official whom she specifically named in her post, who received most of the exposure. Ronis was harshly condemned by the online community but had kept silent until Saturday, May 23rd. In a Facebook post of his own, Ronis said the public outcry had become unbearable.
My life's work has been dismissed with a single online post. She seems to have moved on from her ordeal. I'm unable to do the same. Goodbye.
Minutes later, he shot himself in the head. In response, the woman who complained against him immediately published another post.
I've experienced discrimination in Israel all my life. The one time I complained, another person was hurt. I am truly sorry.
The same internet forums that raged over the allegations of racism only a few days ago are now debating the price of online bullying. But one question seems to be somewhat avoided by everyone. Who was responsible for Ariel Ronis's death?
Yes, and right now with me, Ariel Barocas, a volunteer at the Red Button non-profit organization. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
And also, Ayman Siksik, correspondent. Thank you very much for being with me here in the studio. Ayman, let's start with you. The details are, we are public figures, and as public figures, sometimes we are posting something on Facebook and it creates waves, and then people are just deciding to be God and judging you and putting you out there. And maybe this is the new, let's say, court these days?
Absolutely. A lot of people feel the same way. The new town square as in ancient times. And I think a lot of it has to do with the nature of social media. Social media is an impulsive space. People act on impulses. And when they saw her story, this woman who complained of racism, and it's clear that this is how she felt. She wasn't lying about this. This was her experience. They wanted to share her story and do justice. And I think one of the first things that we learn from this story is that in our impulse to try to do justice and share this woman's story, we can be blind to the complexities and we can be blindly unjust. The consequence, the tragic consequence, really just proves that sometimes in the effort to be self-righteous maybe, or to show the world how enlightened we are, we can bring about tragic consequences.
And this is amazing because if we're looking at this specific situation, if we will try to look at it when we were kids, for example, so it used to be like when the entire class is just deciding that they hate you and everyone stops talking with you and they hate you because someone said something. Now it's different. Now it's all the world. It's all the country. It's violent. It's actually hurting, and you know, I don't want to say it's getting us back to our school days, but it is.
I totally agree, it is. And as you said, it's not only just the class this time, but it's the entire world. And sadly, everyone feels powerful behind a computer, and they don't think about the words they say, and they don't think about the likes that they like, and what they share, and what they comment, and what they post. And they don't think twice. And I think that that's the problem of today's society. And with this example of Ariel Ronis, we can definitely see that people just shared without thinking, without knowing maybe the second side of the story. And that's maybe a message for the world to think twice.
What is your job exactly? What, to prevent or to complain or to stop this kind of bullying in this, on net?
Yes, I am a volunteer at the social startup The Red Button. It's basically a startup that provides a technological solution to the shaming phenomena by downloading a Red Button extension for free. You can basically screenshot, capture your screen and send it to us anonymously, and we take care of it. We work with a lot of social networks like Facebook, like YouTube, a lot of Israeli websites, and we analyze the content. If it's violent, we take action, and about 95% of the reports that we have received are violent and have been removed. That's most important.
You know, I'm trying to think what is bringing us as a society to this point. What is bringing us to as a society to not think about somebody else? Because no one, I believe that no one in this planet would like to be judged, because I don't want anyone to judge me if they don't know me. You don't know my story, you don't know what happened, you don't know who I am or what I did in my life, and you just decide to judge me. And some people, not everyone, are strong.
That's true. I think that has to do with the internet being such a space of illusion. You get the feeling like maybe you know this person, you know all about them because you're friends with them on Facebook, because you saw several posts that they shared. You don't. You don't know about their life, you don't know about their struggles. And I think with this specific story, what really struck a nerve with so many Israelis is that it touched on racism, and particularly racism against...
But with specifically this guy, and we're talking about a person that basically fought against racism. He did the conventions against racism, and he wrote a book about racism, and just no one is even thinking to just check facts and check history. Even, you know what, sometimes we journalists are not checking facts and checking history and just coming with our prejudice ideas. But I want to ask you, like, just years ago, before maybe Facebook, people used to hide behind the comments that we used to see online, like on a report or something. Today, they have no shame. No shame. With their faces, with the faces of their children, they're just sitting there and just spitting and just cursing and bullying everyone with no shame. And I'm asking, how come we as human beings lost the shame?
I think that the shame was always, we never lost the shame, because I think that today is the problem that it's on the web, but before the web existed, it was face-to-face. I think that people were never ashamed, because if someone was behind them, they always felt powerful. And today, they're just hiding behind a screen. So it's the same thing, but cyberbullying, as I said, and shaming, it's just because you're behind a screen, you feel so powerful, and you feel so powerful to shame the other person, because if no one is going to back you, then okay, then you just said it, and the person can't answer you because you're behind a screen. But if you're in live,
You know, I will share with you something, because for me, I had this a lot of times. As someone who's sitting on this chair, I get this a lot, some videos, viral videos that are going out. And sometimes I'm asking myself, because just even today, something was just post on one of the websites and is causing like really big rage in the Arab society. And for me, it's like I'm watching like all the comments and threats that I'm getting. And sometimes people, when they're posting this, they don't understand that it can get really serious. If a person is not strong enough, maybe he won't kill himself, but other people may get ideas and say, well, this person is a really bad person, we need to get rid of him. So they don't understand how hard the consequences can be.
And that's because we thrive on such little information. Very little is enough for us to make judgment and already represent ourselves in a certain way that we think is good online and mirror ourselves in a way that we think is positive. And with Ariel Ronis, I think really what happened there is that this man, this unlucky man, fell into this tornado that we have going on recently.
It's even lack of privacy. You don't have privacy anymore. You don't have, you know, your own life in control anymore the minute that you push the sign button on Facebook.
And it's interesting what you said about the media, because this woman actually was interviewed by one of the Israeli channels before he committed suicide, and it was a very sympathetic interview towards her. They didn't get a comment from Ariel Ronis, they got a very general comment from the Interior Ministry, and after he committed suicide, this interview was pulled from the internet. It's no longer there, you can't watch it anymore. It's kind of a very unsaintly cover-up.
Yeah, you know, sometimes I don't understand why we as journalists give a stage to things and we don't check them before, and to phenomena like racism. I don't understand this. Thank you very much for being with me.
Thank you,
in
Lucy.
the studio. After 50 years of hostility, diplomatic relations between Cuba and the United States are back on track, and it's in the background of this year's Havana Biennale, an art expo in the Cuban capital. Sandy Fortis has more.
An American flag on the front of the National Museum of Fine Arts of Cuba. Even if it's just a work of art by David Hammonds playing with the colors of the American flag, it is still a big step. And it sets the tone of the 12th Havana Biennale. This year, the reconciliation with the United States is on the spotlight. Numerous works of American artists and Cuban exiles will be shown, including a loan of 100 works from the New York Museum of Bronx, in an exceptional exchange.
This is a wonderful challenge in many ways, because it's the first time the Bronx Museum's collection was exhibited in Havana, and it will be the first time that the Bellas Artes collection as a whole will go, you know, selected works will be displayed in New York. So this is a fantastic celebration.
June 22nd, more than 200 artists from 44 countries will be exhibiting their works throughout the city. Created in 1948, the Havana Biennale has long been showcasing artists from developing countries before broadening its horizons in recent years, and especially for this edition. New York artist Duke Riley presented his installation celebrating the historic reapproachment between the two countries through this symbolic ice rink.
I think that as the two countries' relations open up, there'll be a lot more cross-cultural exchange.
The ice skating rink represents the warming of U.S.-Cuban relations, a metaphor that seems to be effective. Relations between the two countries seem to have evolved politically and also artistically.
And to stay with this tune of fun with me right now is cultural correspondent Jaffa Port. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Lucy.
You're coming to summarize Cannes
I'm
Festival.
back from Cannes. No, unfortunately not from Cannes, but here we can summarize.
Next year, I swear to God, I'll send you.
Okay, fingers crossed. 68th Annual Cannes Film Festival came to a close Sunday night, last night, and it actually came to a close with what some might consider a controversial set of prizes. As we've mentioned in the past, two headed the jury this year. year, the Coen brothers, the American Joel and Ethan Coen brothers, who actually stated, Joel stated in the closing ceremony, this isn't a jury of film critics, he said, it's a jury of artists, which might explain some of their artistic choices. The top prize, the Palme d'Or, went to Dipan by French Jacques Audriat. It's a drama, a very heavy social drama about immigrants from Sri Lanka in France, very connected to the wave of migrants, thousands and thousands of migrants coming in, fleeing from Africa, from the Middle East, into Europe and specifically into France, and in this case, a Sri Lankan story. And it on the one hand, touched many critics who found it a solid storytelling and sharp critic of French society, but it was slammed by others who felt it was touching too sensitive a nerve, and in such a rife tensions as they are in France, it wasn't the right content to win such a prize. And it's very, very different, really 180 degrees from what the Coen brothers are doing themselves, and perhaps that was why they chose it. The runner-up, the Grand Prix, went to Son of Saul, actually a Holocaust drama, once again opening the world of World War II and the Holocaust, a very, very heavy story about a Sonderkommando, a man who is trying to bury his son. Very heavy stuff in the Cannes Film Festival
really heavy
prizes.
this year.
Once again, this was actually a film many people thought deserved the first prize, but eventually took the second.
Maybe the migrants, you know.
Yes, the migrant story is very in the headlines. And there was another dispute with the actresses. There were actually two actresses winning Best Actress this year, American Maura Rooney and the French Emmanuelle Berco. A very good year for French film, the best film, Best Actress and Best Actor. So all in all, the French at least are happy with the results in their Cannes Film Festival.
Everyone here in the newsroom are like
perhaps our French colleagues.
Yes.
But the dispute was, of course, over Cate Blanchett, who did not take Best Actress, unfortunately. And this was practically a given in this duo. Rooney Mara, her colleague in Carol,
give something to
her colleague Rooney Mara took it for Carol, and she didn't, although she was the protagonist of the film. But we'll leave it for next year. Perhaps Cate Blanchett will come back.
Maybe you will,
and I will be there.
Yeah, you
hopefully.
will be there. Shahar Beled, thank you.
Thank you very
always
much.
win for me. Thank you very much for this, and thank you our viewers for being with us tonight. Tomorrow we will be here at the same time, same place, from the Jaffa Port, Israel. Have a great night.